I I went to the Episcopal Academy, which is a very elite um, private school uh, here in Pennsylvania. Um, they're out past Media, Pennsylvania now, somewhere out there. But anyway, I remember my mother told me, so I have to take it with a grain of salt, that in order to get into EA, which is a very wealthy, rich, it was pretty much like mostly all white and all male for most of its history. You have to take an IQ test, and my mom told me that I scored 135 on the IQ test, and I just automatically assumed that, well, I must be a smart guy. Um, and I don't even know if it's true or not, but I put a lot of weight on IQ. And I remember I read this book. It was comparing sort of Asian cultures, and I can't think of what it's called at the moment, but I think it was written by um, a University of Michigan psychologist, maybe. The Learning Gap or something like that. But they were saying that Asian cultures, they believe they don't put an emphasis like we do on innate intelligence, right? They look more at um, hard work, like Thomas Edison, I believe, said, genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. If you want to do anything or discover anything worth doing, it's going to take some work, not just sitting around and you know uh, uh, praising yourself for how bright you are or whatever. And in fact, I know a lot of people. I don't want to say a lot of people, but I know some people who have very high IQs who, didn't really do much of anything with them. Some of them don't like to read. In fact, look up the people who, just Google, highest IQs, and you'll find that some of them, they don't really. I mean, they may have whatever great insight it is. It might be you do. I feel like I know one guy in particular. I'm not going to say his name, but I think almost his entire family's in Mensa. He's supposed to have a very high IQ. Doesn't like to read. Has extreme anger outbursts, lies constantly. He knows a lot about, particularly music and some other cultural subjects, but does he really use this intelligence he supposedly has? Uh, I don't see it. Not really. And I remember once I've been mentioning this guy lately, but Stephen Jay Gould. He wrote a book called The Mismeasure of Man, um, and then he did an update like when the Bell Curve came out. Now, the Bell Curve was one of the most painful books that I have ever attempted to read. I think I got through. I didn't attempt to read it, but I didn't finish it. I got to like page 400. I just thought it was a stupid, like a book about intelligence. Um, it was and by written by one guy who had a doctorate from MIT, and another guy who's supposed to be one of the top psychologists tenured at Harvard. Richard Herrnstein, and the lab the former I was talking about Charles Murray, who's still Richard Herrnstein died, but Charles Murray's still going. And that's a whole nother issue, is just like the racism and white supremacy that you will find in psychology, particularly around intelligence testing. Stephen Jay Gould, by the way, The Mismeasure of Man is part mostly that's what that book is about. And you know, you talk about Broca and all these other guys, it's all the way up to Arthur Jensen and Raymond Cattell. And another guy I'd really love to acknowledge is William H. Tucker, who is he was a I think he's still alive. But he's a Rutgers Camden. He was a Rutgers. He's probably emeritus now, but he was a Rutgers Camden psychology professor. And let me tell you, he was such a wonderful man because I got his book, Science and Politics of Racial Research. I mean, really read that book. It's not widely known. It's not as well known as The Mismeasured Man, but it is a phenomenal indictment of the entire field of psychology, particularly around intelligence testing. He got his PhD from Princeton University in psychology, but I think he said it was funded by ETS. And he looked at the Raymond Cattell. He wrote a devastating book on Raymond Cattell. He also wrote a book about the Pioneer Fund, which is really interesting. And then he talked about what's this guy's name? Oh, J. Philip Rushton. And Bill Tucker is such a wonderful human being. Like, I emailed him and I said, "Hey, I just read your book," and he said, "Why don't we meet?" And the guy treated me out like he doesn't know me. I don't know him. He came to visit me. He bought me. We had lunch together just by me emailing him and saying that I appreciated his work. I had a girlfriend, right? I went to Central High School, and it was an all-male institution until my sophomore year. And I had I thought she was a very beautiful girl. I really wanted to go out with her. And she happened to be white, but she's really smart, too. Now, they had a program called MG, right? Mentally Gifted. And like I said, this is the first time I was in public school. I had come out of private school. And I remember I was sent a message that they wanted to test me to see if I was mentally gifted. And I remember thinking, what does mentally gifted mean? What does that mean? That some people's brains are a gift? Well, what are other people's brains? So if you're not deemed mentally gifted, then what is your brain? Your brain is what, garbage, or what? First of all, the human brain itself, which we don't really understand, nobody, is phenomenal. I mean, the average human brain is phenomenal. I would argue the average human brain is itself a gift. And even as a psychotherapist for over 20 years, I would say even people who are not considered particularly bright, I find intelligence in them, frankly. Anyway, so I I think I started laughing during the MG exam. Like, in other words, this guy was going to talk to me for 30 minutes or whatever it was, an hour, and he was going to determine whether I'm intelligent or not. Like, who is he? Is he intelligent? How do I know he's intelligent? And what is intelligence, right? Like, the late Stephen Jay Gould, in addition to William Tucker really doing a blistering indictment of, in fact, he argued that psychology had suffered greatly by being obsessed with the topic of race and intelligence. Race and intelligence. White supremacy, according to Cornel West, is built on three tenets. One, that white people are smarter, white people are more beautiful, and white people are more moral than the rest of the human race. And that there's even a hierarchy amongst white people. So, anyway, Stephen Jay Gould said, how could you reduce something as complicated? And he's coming from an evolutionary biologist standpoint. How could you reduce something as, you know, complicated as intelligence to a number, for example? You know, I just put this number over this number, and that's how much of it you have, as if it's a some quantifiable, you know, uh, um, thing. I guess intelligence. And then you can therefore rank people, how much this person has versus how much that person has. Then, of course, Howard Gardner came out with this notion of multiple intelligences, right? And then Dan Goleman had this idea of emotional intelligence, that maybe it's not just IQ, maybe there's an EQ. And back to Howard Gardner, I was a teacher in the Philadelphia school district, and we had to use his theory, his framework, when we were teaching. So, I forgot all, but there's different kinds of intelligence: interpersonal, intrapersonal, kinesthetic, whatever means you can dance, or do you have musical ability? Like, is Mozart intelligent in every way? Like, or would he have been a great physicist? Would Shakespeare, been a great musician? So obviously there are different kinds of intelligence. Nobody who's just brilliant in every particular, could Albert Einstein dunk like Michael Jordan? Um, so yeah, so it's not so simplistic. This young lady I was talking about, who I went to Central with, I won't say her name, um, but she told me, I remember she was in the mentally gifted program, okay, and she said that one of the instructors uh, in the program wanted her to come to his house, and in a bikini he was going to take photographs of her, and she thought it was odd, but she was actually contemplating doing it, if I remember correctly. And I said, "Are you kidding me? What kind of a pervert is that? Why would he, you know?" And she just trusted it, which I thought was really interesting. What kind of a mentally gifted program is this? Um, and in my work, like, I work as an in-home psychotherapist. I meet so many kids that have like ADHD or whatever, diagnosis. And I'm just actually, I feel like I have to approach my job with humility. And I think, particularly when you're talking about something like intelligence, like, I'm blown away by how smart people are. I mean, that may seem like a very trite comment, but I really am. Like, people are really intelligent. And the average person is really intelligent. And people who are not even considered intelligent, I think, are intelligent. Um, and I like, another thing is like the Wonderlic test, right? Now, this is interesting. I scored very, very high on the Wonderlic test. I think I had like a 45. And it's supposed to measure your ability to be a quarterback. Now, if you just think about that, it's really ridiculous. Like, there's more to being a quarterback than there is than intelligence, right? How about you have to be athletic? How about you have to be able to throw a football? How about you have to be willing to take a hit? I mean, maybe if you're really smart, you won't want to get hit, and possibly get broken limbs or whatever. So, you know, this whole idea of Mensa and mentally gifted, I think people should trust their own mind, no matter, who cares, whatever your IQ is. trust your own thinking, trust your own mind. You have a phenomenal brain, having a human brain, and don't ever feel less than or inadequate in any way. Uh, and there are particular topics that I'm interested in. This is one of them: class, race, inequality, social justice. Those are the topics I'm going to continue to keep talking about. And if you watch this video, thank you very much. And I hope that I'm going to start churning these out and hopefully figure out how to get people to chat on this thing. Thank you.